That's classic. We bring you great laughs and a unique behind-the-scenes look at classic television shows and movies. I'm John Cato. I'm an actor, voiceover artist, and also bring you an amazing insight as a moderator with over 20 years experience in the television industry. Okay, well, today on That's Classic, we have an awesome guest, none other than Barry Livingston, who obviously played Ernie Douglas on My Three Sons and has quite the prolific career. And we're looking forward to talking to him. And of course, my recurring co-host, Bob Bergen, voiceover extraordinaire, is here as well today to talk with Barry. So anyway, Barry, thank you a ton for being here.
I'm pleased to be anywhere. So this is as good a place as any.
I like it. I like it. Well, like I said, you really have had a prolific career. I mean, part of when I do this, I love to go back and look at, where did you start and all of that. I was blown away. I'll be really honest with you. You're the amount of people that you have been around throughout your career is quite stunning. One of the stories that I saw was that you were in a movie, Rally Around the Flag Boys with
exclamation point.
Yeah, exactly. I almost missed it, Barry.
Yeah, you got to have that. Yes, I was. But again, the story is it's the first job I ever had, really. And I only got it because I went with my brother on the interview. He was already kind of doing some acting stuff. And my mother just dragged me along, and the producers saw me in the waiting room, and they said, "Oh, the movie has another role. The little brother of Paul Newman. I mean, of Stan, the role that he read for." So anyway, yes, they asked me if I could read, and I did, and lo and behold, I got it. So Stan and I were Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward's kids in this movie. But the story is too that I got fired.
Right.
I got fired because I got hired and I wasn't wearing glasses when it started.
Wow.
And during the actual production, the shoot, we were maybe a week or so in, and it shot a couple of scenes already. And then my eyes started to cross, and inexplicably, and I didn't know. And the director, a guy named Leo McCarey, who is a legend in this business, director,
total legend.
Scoop, a lot of classic movies. He was an old school screamer, and he started losing his mind because he thought I wasn't paying attention, wasn't looking where I was supposed to be looking. And I just, I was looking at a TV. That's all I had to do. It was no brainer. But my eyes were going, all over the place. So anyway, they took me to a hospital right from the set, and
wow,
said no problem, not a seizure or anything serious. He just needs glasses. He's got an astigmatism. Maybe the strain or something was causing his eyes to turn in abnormally. It's looking like Marty Feldman suddenly.
Right.
And then so the director and I guess the producers consulted with each other and went, "Well, we got to let this kid go because we didn't want him to wear glasses. We didn't think he, Paul Newman's son, would be so odd looking." And so anyway, yes, I was ceremoniously. I'm still in the movie. I have one shot. The very first scene that you see the character, he's upside down, and Joan Woodward and a character named Percy Kilbride have me by the feet. Well, that's me. But then when the rest of the movie, when the kid's on his feet, that's another actor, another child actor.
What's the story about? It's I read on one of the articles that I read that Paul Newman crawled inside of a TV set to help you. Is that true?
As sweet as he was, he was trying to diffuse what was becoming a very tense situation because the director was getting very angry at me that he thought I wasn't paying attention and being a professional. 4 years old,
right?
Being professional at 4.
Come on.
And that's how Paul took it. He went, "Come on, here, somebody, you got the master shot. You saw me come in through the front door. He already was thinking like a director. He goes, "You're probably just going to have a close-up of the two-shot of the kids watching TV." And he said, "Somebody, get me a puppet or something. I'll crawl inside the TV."
Wow.
It was just a big empty box. And he said, "I'll get his attention. It'll be easy. Just cool it." And anyway, that didn't work either. So then it was like, well, I was fired.
Was it heartbreaking? Was it heartbreaking for you for that to happen?
I'm still in therapy over it for many years later. I'm still trying to grasp with what I did wrong. I noticed that it was not a good day, and I noticed that I was literally put in a car and driven off the
Oh
lot.
my God.
And I sensed that none of this was good. And of course, my brother got to stay, which was another kind of
Oh,
strange thing. I was let go, he wasn't. So yeah, I mean, I took it as much as in stride as a 4-year-old can when he's fired. But tough. Welcome to Hollywood.
right,
Right.
right.
It stamped me, real quickly, really early on that it's a tough business.
says a
It
lot
doesn't
about Paul Newman, by the way.
get any easier no matter where you are. There's going to be the peaks and the valleys, and
Yeah. Well, mine was a very short little hill and then a very steep drop off into oblivion. But Paul was great. To answer your question, Paul was like a method actor, the actor studio guy, and he, prior to that, I remember he'd come into the classroom, our school classroom, and would sit and he was trying to develop a relationship with us and would go over math problems with us and try to act like a dad, just do things that I'm sure now I understand why he was doing it. Back then I had no idea why he was coming in to, help me with my
Yeah,
math.
yeah.
But now I go, oh, I get it. He was working on creating a relationship between
Mhm.
me and Stan. And yes, he was a terrific guy, really,
That's
really great guy.
that says a lot. I mean, seriously, because you look on later on, he does the Newman's Own Dressing. He does all that work that he did for kids, and
Yeah.
then you were there so early on. It shows you that. I mean, obviously, it really came from his heart, like sincerely.
He
You
was a
know,
sincere,
pretty cool.
authentic guy, and a no BS kind of dude. And he took his work serious, and but didn't take himself too serious. I think that was something you could say about Mr.
Yeah.
Newman. He was well, one of the big ones.
So you had, I mean, I like I said, I was blown away. I mean that sincerely. I've talked to a lot of different people, on the podcast here, but you have to. I mean, I saw you worked with Lee Marvin. You worked with, or you were not. You were on the set with Lee Marvin, Jack Lemmon, through
Yes,
Fred de
Fred,
Cordova.
Fred
You,
Cordova. Yeah.
Jackie Gleason, Jerry Lewis, Mickey Rooney. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
What?
no, I was. What was it the other night? I just looked it up on IMDb because I said, what was I watching the other night? Oh, I think I was watching The Offer, which is a really cool movie, mini series about the making of The Godfather.
Mhm.
And there's
Yes.
a guy there, and Arthur Hiller, which was a great director, went on to direct Love Story and a few other really big movies. And I went, gosh, I worked with Arthur Hiller in this Dick Powell Theater when he with Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney actually was nominated for an Emmy in this thing, and I was like,
Wow.
look at that. That went way back. It just, I was like, wow, that was early days for him and for me. But yes, I have worked with quite a few people.
Do you remember anything about Mickey Rooney?
It's interesting. They did try to trick me. I remember, and we shot it at a studio out here where we actually wound up years later shooting My Three Sons. It was called Republic Studios then, but it became CBS Radford. But it was
Sure.
Republic Studios back at that point. And the scene was Mickey Rooney was a very lonely merchant marine sailor on leave, and eventually I think he's knifed by somebody in a sad
Jeez.
ending. But oh yeah, because that was the thing is that he was supposedly in the alley laying there after he'd just been knifed by some thugs, and I played a little boy that was rode my bike up and discovered him. And
Wow.
so I remember probably Hiller's idea or somebody just said, let's not rehearse it. Let's just put Barry on a bike and just have him ride down this alley, and it was all set up with the cameras at the other end.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come across Mickey, who's laying on the ground, going, "Help me, little boy! Help me,
Jeez.
little boy!" And I think I was at that point. I'd already done a Buster Brown commercial and been fired from a major motion picture, so I kind of knew what was happening. I knew that it was they were filming this, and I kind of went along with it. It just was like it was kind of clever, and I understood they were trying to get an honest, real reaction shock for me, and hopefully they got it. I guess I don't know, but Yeah,
Did you
that's
like?
what I
Do
remember.
you have any recollection of Mickey as far as like he
Mickey
kind of
was
like?
very sweet. I remember he came up to my parents and was very, full of
Oh,
praise. He was very kind to, said some, that boy, he's really a good little actor, and he's got a big career ahead of him, and who knew? But
wow.
obviously Mickey knew. But yes, it was kind of cool.
Yeah. Where does Jerry Lewis enter the picture? I didn't. I was trying to tie that in. I was looking. I was like, I
It
don't know.
probably came a couple of years after doing that Dick Powell Theater with Mickey Rooney. I did a bunch of films at Paramount before I did My Three Sons. One of them being The Errand Boy with Jerry
Oh
Lewis.
yeah, you
It's
Um,
the
were in that.
candy
huh?
store scene, isn't it?
The candy store scene. Yes,
Yes.
it's kind of funny. I mean, you can find it
Well,
online even if it's the candy.
oh,
Yeah.
no, the whole movie's great, but just his physical comedy
Yeah.
in the scene. Did you have a difficult time not laughing?
I think so because we'd already, as a kid, Jim Carrey. I mean, Jerry Lewis was our Jim Carrey.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
we all thought he was hysterical, and yeah, it was it was a real thrill. I don't think Greg laughed though. I mean, I don't I think it was a professional finally at that point. The beauty of that little scene is that it goes on quite a long time on screen.
Yep.
It's just they're filming a bit. It
Hmm.
wasn't like nowadays, the dialogue, and they're saying, and maybe there's a button punchline at the end, and they move on. This was like like an old-fashioned kind of Chaplin-esque skit of
Wow.
me and the two other little child actor kids at the studio lot making him go up and down a ladder to get candy off you know, and yeah, there was a little bit of a button, but if you watch it today, you'll see it's unusual in its length. Just it's just plays out very very slowly and kind of methodically, and it works. It was funny.
Was he like a warm kind of guy to the kids? I mean, he has
Yeah,
a wild reputation
yeah.
actually.
No, he was manic. I remember him being manic, kind of
Yeah.
like startlingly so. He was
Yeah.
directing the movie too, and probably wrote it.
Yep. I think you're
Uh,
right.
I just remember him running around. That's I don't even remember shooting scene, but I do remember him, the energy that he was expending and running around. And I think he ran in front of the camera once when it was tracking, doing some kind of a dolly shot, and the camera hit him and knocked him over. And you
Wow.
know, and those kind of things I think were more impressive than actually working with Jerry as an actor.
Wow. Wow. So what I mean, believe me, I want to get to My Three Sons, but you got so darn much out there that I'm like, what? What about Jackie Gleason? Where's that
And
come in?
that was a small part in a movie called Papa's Delicate Condition, and
Oh yeah.
again, he was another guy that was, this is post honeymooners, and maybe he had done The Hustler, I guess. So he was, into his acting chops beyond just doing the honeymooners. Yeah, he was. I just he was drunk. I mean, that was obvious.
Oh
And
wow.
and again, I think he crashed his golf cart, as I recall.
Oh,
Not
jeez.
badly, but he didn't stop in time and like crashed into some pole or something like that. And but again, I love Jackie. My dad and our whole family would sit up and watch the Honeymooners, which I think was already in reruns at that point,
Hmm.
by the early
Wow.
'60s. But that was just a real treat because it used to come on at 11:30 at night. To this day, I hear that song, the Honeymooners theme
Yeah.
song, and it brings chills. Just not because the song is that amazing, but it was like a family experience
Yeah.
that we would all kind of gather, and it was past my bedtime. It was 11:30 at night, and I was, probably 7 years old, and it just seemed so late when I'd see the moon, Jackie
Yep.
Gleason, and
Yep.
that music. To this day, it gives me a shiver
Oh
because
yeah.
he was so great.
With so My Three Sons, obviously, you were on it a long time. Do you remember actually auditioning for it? I mean, I realize that you started as the neighbor and then of course they adopt you, but do you remember that initial audition?
Yeah, and I was already very at that point pretty well established.
Yeah.
I had a recurring role on the Ozzie and Harriet show, so I'd done 16 episodes of that, and I had just done a pretty big major motion picture called My Six Loves with Debbie Reynolds at Paramount. So they knew me, and they knew me from being on the set.
Hmm.
Stan, I mean, my mother would just, I had nowhere else to go, no daycare, so I would just go hang out on the set because Stan, my brother, played Chip, and
Yes, of course.
the show has already been on the air for 3 years, I guess. So and it was a huge hit. So yeah, but I was asked to come in and read. Went, I remember very vividly going to Don Fedderson's office, and the Brain Trust was there with Don, big office, and he was sitting behind this massive desk and stone face, kind of stoic, and the a couple other guys. The other prominent guy in the room was a guy named Gene Reynolds, who was a
Hmm.
director and went on to create MASH. Not, well, he was a big. He produced MASH.
Nash.
He also created Lou Grant created Room 222.
Oh yeah.
But he was a really at that point a pretty well established television director, and it was very nice. He was the sweetest guy in the room. He was a child actor. He was in
Hmm.
Santa Fe Trail, I think, with Errol Flynn as a kid, and so
Lots of great movies. Really,
yeah,
really good.
Oh, I didn't know that about Gene Reynolds.
yeah.
Wow.
I think he kind of understood the pressure I was under,
Hmm.
and he was the most human in the room, I thought. I read, did my reading, and then Don Fedderson said, "Thank you for coming." No reveal of anything other than "Thank you for coming," and wait out in the office for a second, would you? So, I remember we sat out there, my dad and I, and sat there 5 minutes, 10, 15 minutes go by. We're going, "Oh no, what's happening here?" They're having some kind of debate. Maybe one person wants me, another person said no, and anyway, he eventually comes out and he had keys to his lovely pad down in Palm Springs because we said we were leaving directly from their office going to Palm Springs for a vacation, and he came out with the keys to it. He says, "I'm sorry it took so long." He says, "We want to have Barry on the show. He's got the part, and I want you as my guest to stay at my house." But it
Oh,
took me
cool.
forever. I couldn't find the keys. He said, That's what took me so long. I was hunting around the office where I lost the keys." And he said, I found them. Here, have a great time, and that was my audition day with for My Three Sons.
Did you go right to his place
Yeah,
then?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we
Dude,
were all
Wow.
packed. We were all ready to go, and we were like, let's screw the Palm
right?
Springs motel. We're gonna go spend the week at Don Fedderson's house, which we did. It
So,
was great.
so Barry, at that point, was Mike's character being discussed leaving the show, and they were just
Not with us, and I don't know if that was a preemptive kind of move to get somebody in the bullpen to be a son. I don't
mhm,
think it was. I know Tim was making a lot of rumbling. Tim Considine, who was the
Yeah.
oldest son, Mike, was making it pretty clear he wanted to do more than just be
mhm,
Mike. He wanted to direct, and because of the crazy way we shot, we didn't have different directors for every show. We had the same director for the entire season because they shot around Fred MacMurray, and we
right.
shoot out of 7, 8, 9 episodes a day, just doing stuff on Fred. So for continuity, they had to have a one director for everything, and Tim wanted to be that guy. And
Wow.
anyway, MacMurray I think was not keen on having Tim take over the directing response, but they let Tim did they kind of broke the mold and let him direct one episode start to finish. You started on a Monday and you finished usually on a Friday, and completed an episode. So that was kind of a concession. Anyway, yeah, I came, because I came on the show as the friend next door. I wasn't a son,
Right.
Right, of course.
but Tim was the oldest son. And then the next year, or at the end of that year, he told him I either get to direct, or I'm leaving. And they said, well, there's the door. So
And,
Wow.
and because of that, it was like, take it or leave it from him. Was that why they never referenced the character again?
I, partly probably, but I think once they were gone, they didn't want to, create whatever happened. We were talking about Mike or
Not
whatever.
like, hey, look,
That
we
was
got a letter. We got a letter. Isn't that great? I
Yeah.
mean, just
I think we
Yeah.
did got a letter from him from Paraguay.
okay, oh, there we go.
And he
Okay.
had like sent us like an Indian indigenous native mask or something arrived, and I think that was the only reference. Because once you're gone,
Wow.
you're gone. And
Can
and
can you so can you elaborate? You said a little bit about Fred MacMurray's interesting shooting schedule. I know the
yeah.
story about. Can you talk about?
Yeah.
his was, I guess it was contractual. That's how he wanted to shoot the show.
Yeah, he was had been warned by I believe Robert Young, who was in Father Knows Best, that he said
Yeah.
television is a grind. It'll kill you. He said it's just early, early in at 8 a.m. and you won't be home till 8 or 9 p.m. every day. And he said, I'm just telling you, if you ever do television, just you don't beware. It's a grind. And so Fred was forewarned. And when Don Fedderson broached the idea to Fred of being on the show, he said, I don't want any of that. I'm interested, but I don't want to have that kind of workload at
Yeah.
this point in my life and career. And he had decided he didn't really want to travel. He had two young adopted girls that he kind of wanted to be a family man and be around. So he came up with the idea that Don Fedderson, who created the show, said, "No, we'll shoot all your stuff first." And out of back in the day, the episodes then you do 40 episodes, a year.
Wow.
Now now it's down to like 8 or 9, 10 as a
That's
season.
right. Yeah.
Ivers.
Network TV maybe does 22 or something. But anyway, so yes, they agreed to just shoot him out, and he wouldn't work past 5 p.m. either. It was
Wow.
contractual that he would go from 8 a.m. to 5. Occasionally, they'd plead with him to catch a shot and go over, but it was pretty ironclad that he would be out the door, by 5 ish, and but they would shoot everything, all of it, work out of 10 episodes a day and just do masters shots of everybody in the scene, and then just jump in to get his close up, and then just move on to the next scene, get another master and get his close up. So they would skip all the matching shots. So they would do that maybe for about 6 weeks while Fred was there, and then he would leave, and he wasn't working all that much, but he would just, do things with his family, and
Wow.
so we would go back then, and they'd keep track of what you were wearing, everything about the scene and how it looked. If it was somebody took a Polaroid, if Fred had happened to walk out in the middle of the scene, you'd freeze and they'd snap a Polaroid, and then you'd continue the rest of the scene. You'd look how you had, if you had your arms folded or just standing there, you'd have to get in that pose, and then it would be action, and you would continue the scene. And then your close-ups, if they, doing a two-shot or a close-up, would just be reading. You're on camera, but off stage was a lady named Adele Sliff who would read Fred's part, and she was stand on an apple box because Fred was 6'4",
Wow.
and that would be your eye line. You'd be looking up at her, and she would be reading Fred's lines. So most of the close-ups you see with on Sons, if you're on camera and it's your close-up, you're not really even doing the scene with MacMurray. It was with a script girl.
How
And
did that affect you
one of
as an
the
actor?
I'm
this
sorry,
is one of the reasons why a lot of the guys wore the same wardrobe show after
what?
show after show.
Oh yeah, no, it simplified things.
Yeah.
Certainly Uncle Charlie never took off that friggin' apron
No.
for like 12 years. That same blue apron, that same blue shirt, and then yeah, we had it presented some challenges because you could shoot the master in January, and they'll get around to September to do your close up, and you could have gained 3, 4, 5 pounds. You could have
Wow.
grown. You were
Wow.
kids. You could have grown 2 inches in 6 or 7 months,
Yeah.
although I didn't, sadly. But but anyway, yeah, it was, and the script supervisor had to notate all of the little nuances of, if your collar tabs were buttoned or unbuttoned, or if you had I mean, that if you catch it, you'll see little mistakes like that somebody will be standing there, and their collar tabs are, when they come out in the master shot, they're buttoned down. In the close-ups, they're like ones up. It'll just be like going up and down when they cut back and forth
Wow.
because some of those little airs slip through the cracks.
What was Fred like when he was there?
Yeah, he was a gentle guy. He was really quiet, kind of shy, I thought.
Wow.
Some would say aloof, but I don't think that was it. I think he was he existed in a different stratosphere in Hollywood than we did. I mean, he
Hmm.
was always accessible and kind of nice and friendly, but not a gregarious guy. Not he on screen he's a very loving kind of
Oh yeah.
more than friendly, but just has a very warmth about him. Off camera, he was much more reserved and private, and would retreat to his trailer, and not a whole lot of sitting around the set with everybody. Uh, but that said, he was a really terrific guy. I mean, he never blew his top. Never saw him, like some actor stars, throw their weight around. He threw his weight around, but it was quiet. And if he wanted something done, it would usually, Fred had mentioned something, that something had to be changed, and it was. But yeah, pretty much, old school pro.
Did I was when you were talking about Tim Constantine, wow, terrible pronunciation, but when he was I know that he was in the Shaggy Dog with Fred.
Yes, Fred, yeah.
Was he cast because of Fred?
I think so. I think Fred liked him. And Tim was a very likable guy. There's no two ways about it. Tim, very smart, very opinionated, outspoken, and but I think he was talented as an actor, and I think Fred and he, they respected each other, and I thought when it came down to casting that, the original Sons, I'm sure MacMurray had to approve it, if not even suggest that Tim would be a good choice for that. I mean, some of the other, but here's where Fred exerted his influence before. Ryan O'Neal was actually cast in the pilot, and as to play Robbie, which
Oh,
eventually
no kidding.
I
went to
never
John
knew that.
Grady. And Ryan O'Neal, Fred didn't think he could do comedy, and he was let go.
Oh,
And
wow.
they
Wow.
Did he do a pilot?
He did the pilot. Well, he did
Oh,
enough of the
okay.
pilot to the point of which MacMurray decided, and it was his call or his push, that he didn't think that Ryan O'Neal was funny, which of course
Interesting.
he's very very good comedic
Right.
actor, had a great career as a comedian in film. But that's the way it went. If Fred could make or break, I guess, and he would have been fine, I'm sure. But whatever, I don't know.
It
Maybe
was it was before your
personality.
time, but it was a lovely time for you to go up to him and say, Ryan, I got fired too. I didn't
Yeah, yeah,
get
yeah.
that.
Well, I should ask him if I ever see him to go, hey, is
There
this
you
true? Because I know it was my mother was, sort of involved. Well, the very first person cast on that show, other than William Frawley, was my brother Stan.
go. Mhm.
Oh, wow.
He might even been cast before William Frawley. Stan was cast as Chip, and then I think maybe Frawley was next, and then they worked their way through Considine, and then Ryan O'Neal, and then they started the pilot and realized that, or Fred realized he wasn't keen on Ryan O'Neal, and then they brought, because my mother heard about this. Frankly, she said, "Oh, we're starting," and she knew Mary Grady, who Mary
Mhm.
Grady was a talent agent. Her son was
Yeah.
Don,
Mhm.
and I think she let her in on the secret, so they got the leg up to get Don in to audition, and the rest is history. The pilot was finished with Don in it, not with Ryan. So it was,
That pilot, that footage has to exist somewhere on YouTube. Somebody must have that.
that's a different,
Yeah.
maybe somewhere in some vault somewhere at Paramount, because that's where they were shooting back
Right.
then. It was designated.
I remember when I was a kid watching the show, and they had one of those flashback episodes.
Oh yeah.
Was when the show was in color and they're flashing back, and I remember sitting with my mom going, "I'm very confused. Um, uh, Chip has blonde hair, and everybody's black and white. When did they decide to go color? And why is Uncle Charlie Fred Mertz?" I mean, as a child watching
Yeah,
that
yeah,
confusing thing, I must have been like 7 or 8 years old, or maybe even younger. But like,
yeah,
man, and it just looked so different, and I don't understand what happened. What happened to these people? And
yeah.
I thought they'd filmed it today. I didn't understand what a flashback was.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
to a small child, it was very confusing.
Well, it
So was,
took a
so was Darren Stevens changing. That. Don't get me
Yeah,
started.
yeah, yeah. No, another Darren came in. Yeah, and again, they never mention anything when they make a big change like that. That was that's you just accept it, and you know. But the show changed networks too. So it
Mhm.
started on ABC, and then when it did go to CBS, which was probably '64, because I think I was in some of the black and whites.
Mhm.
The very first season, I was a friend next door. But then I think when it went to the CBS, and yeah, I guess it was CBS. That's when William Frawley became ill, and they had to let him go and brought in William Demarest. So we actually, I think, came in uh, almost at the same time. I think the year I became a son, they introduced Bill Demarest
Hmm.
right at the beginning, and then probably 6 or 7 episodes in, they did the storyline that introduced me as the little boy next door, the foster child who and Tim was leaving, so
What can we talk a little bit about William Frawley, by the way? I mean, he is obviously with especially with this new being the Ricardos, it's even coming, even bigger about his past and everything. What was he really like? Because I did read a little bit that apparently you would go to lunch with him and all of this. What was he really like?
not too far different than Fred Mertz or Bub. He was a lovable, gruff, outspoken, very little filter, an alcoholic, no doubt about that,
Yeah.
which probably loosened his tongue even more. But he was funny, and again, guys like that, they cut them huge slack that you would never get away with the kind of stuff that he did in a
Mhm.
television series now, just getting drunk at lunch and not wanting to come back to work or coming back in a half an hour, 45 minutes late. That would never be tolerated. But, they understood who they had. And I think, again, MacMurray loved Frawley, and that gave
Yeah.
him some cover.
Good point.
And Dad didn't want to see him go. So that probably, I don't know, whether Bill knew that or not, but nonetheless, it was pretty apparent that MacMurray, was his champion. And he was that guy that you saw on TV, really.
Did you rescue him, so to speak, a few times at lunch? Because I
You
also
know,
read that the cast was kind of put in charge of trying to get him back.
well, yeah, we were asked by our production manager to help out because time is money, and you go to lunch at 1 o'clock. You got to be back by 2, not 2:15, and so we were encouraged. We should have asked for money for this, but we were encouraged to tell Bill, it's time to get back to work, Uncle Bill. We got to go back to work, and he would
Wow.
be on his third Cutty Sark by then, and his other like cantaloupe. He had a half a cantaloupe with a scoop of vanilla ice cream in it every day for
Oh
lunch.
my gosh.
It was his. So maybe.
Fascinating information.
Uh,
It's so
Really?
a quirky bit of
it
information.
is. Yes, it's not bad. I've had it. But still, that was our job, an unofficial job, to try to lure him back. And of course, when Stan and I, who were young kids, he was he wouldn't stomp and bite our head off like he would if some PA came and started to hassle him. He'd take even longer. But yeah, so we were able to kind of prod him to get back into work. Of course, then he'd get back to work sometime in the afternoon. He was pretty much useless because he, he was an old
He
guy.
was there. He was
He
there.
showed up, but he would sometimes fall asleep, and that again they'd put up with it. He got away with
Wow.
it.
So did the when William Frawley comes in
Demarest,
I mean
William
I'm
Demarest.
sorry, William Demarest, thank you. When William Demarest comes in, what was that for you as an actor? Like, oh, big relief, or was there a huge energy shift?
It was a little different because we all loved Frawley, and he was
Yeah.
he loved the kids, Stan and I, and we just thought he was hysterical because he would swear like a drunken sailor. And of course, the more we laughed, the more he would lean into that, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and it was a tough thing for Frawley to let that go because he really relished becoming Bub, and particularly to give it up to one of his competitors, Demarest. I don't think they were great friends at all. And so, but he had no choice. They couldn't insure him anymore. And so, I think there was one episode where the baton was, the spatula was passed to the to the next
Yeah.
nanny, and pretty frosty, as I recall, that they weren't. I'd say they weren't great friends. But
Interesting.
he understood. He had to go, and I think he died very soon after
Yeah.
he left. Maybe a couple of
Oh
months later.
man, how
He passed
sad.
away.
How, by
Was
the way,
was
oh, go ahead,
uh,
Bob.
real just was the move from Bryant Park to North Hollywood just, hey, this is a continuing story, something different to do, or is there I guess a network or logical reason behind it that we don't know about?
That was the move coincided with switching from ABC to CBS.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it was pretty much we went to color then, so there was a lot of maybe reasons to just shake up the look a little bit of the show, and everybody was going to color.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't stay black and white without looking like a dinosaur, and so that probably had something to do with the shift from color to from black and white to color,
You
and
know, and the tone of the show constantly changed from the black and white to the color to CBS. I was
Mhm.
working at CBS Radford once years ago because I think the house is gone, but I remember seeing that house going, that's it,
Yeah.
because that establishing shot made it
Yeah.
look like this gigantic mansion,
Yeah.
and it's such a tiny little set. It's such our
Yeah.
facade, I should say.
It's just a facade. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd walk, get out of the station wagon and go through the front door, but you're just walking into
Walking into trees.
walking into some bushes behind the facade. And then they had all the interiors on the soundstage. But yeah, it was a transition. I mean, and again, we all kind of got used to Demarest and his. He was like Frawley, but a little. Again, Frawley was a little more lovable, and Demarest
Yeah.
was similar. I think he was like a recovered alcoholic, so he was a little snappier, a little edgier, maybe,
Hmm.
and but then nonetheless, he was a hoot. He was a great character actor, and the biggest regret is I never really mind some of the. He would always talk, and this is before art houses, movie theaters where you could go to
Yes.
see old, the $1 million movie, you could catch a film or whatever from back in the. And he always kind of referenced Preston Sturges, who was
Cool.
Oh,
one of the great first auteurs in Hollywood.
very
And
much so.
Miracle of Morgan's Creek and The Great
Oh
McGinty
yeah.
and Lady Eve and all these great movies, and I was just not interested. I just said, oh yeah, that sounds good. What time is the Dodger game on radio? I'd be
Right.
like
Right.
Wow.
completely, because he would always talk about how great, the Great McGinty, that's the best part ever, and you got to see it. And I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, but I'm sure he had some really great stories that I missed.
Yeah, I get it. By the way, how many seasons? I'm not. I'm sorry. How many weeks did you shoot in a season?
How many weeks in a season? Well, I don't know how many weeks, but just month wise, we
Yeah.
had about a 9 month shooting schedule. I mean, maybe 8.5, 9, and then it would shut down for 3 months. I'd go back to public school for 3 or 4 months, take my licks, and then come back and
How was public school being on a hit
Yeah. Take
series?
my licks. Yeah.
yeah, it was challenging.
Yeah.
Uh, Kids are merciless, and
Hmm.
particularly, and you're confused anyway when you're, why do people like me or why do people not like me?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be liked for being Ernie,
Yeah.
but that was hard to differentiate for kids, and I kind of knew the difference, but to get people to acknowledge that there was an actor playing Ernie, was challenging, and
Sure.
you know I was.
Where did you guys grow up? What part of LA?
In Studio City, we
Okay.
moved to Studio City in '63,
Oh yeah. I
and
actually lived there at one
I went
point.
to
Yeah.
North. Did you? Yeah, I went to
Yeah.
North Hollywood High. I
Hmm.
went to
Wow.
Millikan Junior High and then North Hollywood High.
Okay.
I graduated from North Hollywood High.
Very cool.
There you go. Hey, we've talked about a lot of the actors on there, but I want to go back to Fred de Cordova, because I mean, especially for a younger guy, you sound like you had quite a special relationship with him. I mean, it
Yeah,
wasn't just like, oh, hey, you're the actor on the set. It seems like it was like almost a mentor.
he was. I had a father, but he was like a second father. And, for your audiences, Fred DeCordova probably became much more well known as Johnny Carson's producer of The Tonight Show for some 20 years.
Correct.
But prior to that, he directed a lot of films. Ronald Reagan was one of his best friends from directing the Bonzo movie. Bonzo Goes to College and Bonzo Does This.
Yeah.
Fred was a socialite. Fred was, circulated among and he also produced and directed. I don't know if he directed, but he produced the Jack Benny Show, produced the George Burns Show. He was a real behind the scenes icon in Hollywood. That's why Johnny Carson hired him. But he was our director for about 4 years, and I just had a real special relationship. I just loved the guy, and he was perhaps the wittiest, sharpest tongued person I think I've ever encountered. I think anybody that knew him would probably agree with that. But that said, he took a liking to me, and we were pals. I would hang out with him after work. Go to watch the dailies from the night before, and we'd sit there and have dinner, and crack each other up, and take me to ball games with Jack Benny, and it was really, really.
I'm so jealous of the entire scenario. I went to ball games with Jack Benny.
I know. Wait. You can't just drop that one. What was that like going to a baseball game with Jack Benny? Wow.
Well, I remember we were going to go to a game. I went to Fred's home up in Truesdale Estates, which is a very ritzy area above Beverly Hills, and the doorbell rang, and he said, "Oh, go get the doorbell." I said, "What am I, the butler?" I was like, trying to be smart guy with Fred, make him laugh, and he, God, get your ass over there, you little runt, and I opened the door, and boing, there's Jack Benny standing there going, "Well, now who are you?" And so, yes, it was quite a, yes, we went to the game. I sat in the back seat and listened to Fred and Jack Benny just exchange repartee. Funny guys, both of them. And my favorite, one of the things I just recall is Jack Benny telling Fred how he had met Vin Scully's son. And he said, Fred, I met Vin Scully's son, and he said, he's the splitting image of Vin. He said, if I was an Eskimo and I was walking through a blizzard in the frozen tundra, and I walked into an igloo and saw this little boy sitting around a campfire eating whale blubber with some Eskimos, I would say that's Vin Scully's son. I was like, oh my God, that was too good. My impression wasn't that good, but
not bad.
That was the gist of his way of explaining how this kid, Vin Scully's son, was a splitting image. He went that whole long-winded thing about an Eskimo, and I was like, wow, that was a funny way to get to that point. But then we go for drinks at the Cock and Bull on Sunset Boulevard, which is another old-time hangout, and the Bistro in Hollywood, Beverly Hills. So, yes, he was quite a great guy. I really loved him.
Did you? Is that also like I said, I did a lot of reading about you, and Lee Marvin came up, and Jack Lemmon. Was that through Fred?
Fred knew everybody. Fred, I mean, that's why Johnny Carson hired. Fred knew everybody, from the Lee Marvins to, the Prince of Monaco, and he was, it wasn't funny because his wife Janet, and he didn't get married till late. He was a handsome guy playing to town. I think he was 55 when he married Janet, who was his wife, But after work, every night, there'd be a party at, Jimmy Stewart's house, or Greg Peck is having us over for dinner tonight, or cocktails with the Bennies. And, I just thought, wow, what a life he's got outside of this other world. James Mason and, and all that whole crowd will be there. And so he was, he was part of that Chasen's A-list of guys. And, I rode his coattails a little bit,
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. We would have too. Cato and I would have been like, "Hey, Fred, what are you doing after?"
In a heartbeat. Did you ever meet Johnny, by the way?
I did. I did. I I did the Carson show once. I actually
Oh,
right after My Three Sons, I did Hallmark Hall of Fame did a version of the Broadway musical You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown.
yeah,
And
sure.
so I played Linus in that. And it was shot at NBC. And I remember, walking over to Fred's office. By this time, he was now fully ensconced as a executive producer of The Tonight Show. And anyway, yeah, I kind of, told him what I'm doing and all that. And one day he showed up on the set. And of course, the producers, just like went, "Oh God, it's Fred DeCarter. We got to get, some publicity for this." And so they were very impressed that Fred, came up and greeted me, and the executive producer Warren something or other, was pitching the idea of, gee, it'd be great if we could get something, we get Sparky. It's Sparky Charles Schultz. He'll and he had never done any kind of PR. He was living up in wherever San Rafael, played
Right,
hockey.
right.
That was the only place he ever went. And Fred said, "Well, if we're gonna have Sparky on, we got to have Barry on too." And they were like, "Okay." So
Wow.
I was like, "Ooh, okay." And what it wound up being actually was we did two songs from the show. I think we performed on the Tonight
Oh,
Show.
did you?
Charles Schultz came out and sat with Johnny. We were trotted out there like the troupe of entertainers, and we did a couple songs from the show, and of course then we all met Carson too, and that was
Was that Hallmark Hall of Fame? Was that the one that Noel North was in too?
well, who?
Noel North.
Yes, I think so. Yes, I
Okay.
think
And
she
yeah,
played Peppermint Patty. I think. Yeah, I
I
was
think.
trying.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because
I
was
posted something on Facebook and somebody kept asking me. I'm glad you said that because I was going, I know just about everybody's name that are Mark Montgomery played, I forget what, but Wendell Burton was Charlie Brown, Bill Hinnon, who was the original Snoopy, was Snoopy,
mhm.
Ruby Pearson was Lucy, and Noel, I didn't remember her name till now, was
There we
Peppermint
go.
Patty. Yeah,
Hey,
thank you.
so I want to kind of. I think we're along that the same timeline, but I do have a question, buddy. So, what were your thoughts when they said, "How about a My Three Sons Partridge Family reunion"? Because y'all had
We said, how
nothing
much does it pay?
other than your
That's
all.
always
How much does it pay?
Oh,
at
there you go.
that
Okay.
point. Look, I had done a lot of, post My Three Sons, and I know we rarely got into this, but still, I was already had done another television
Oh, I
series
know.
called Sons and Daughters. I'd been on Broadway working. I went to New York afterwards and became, a working actor in New York.
Yeah.
Um, some other, a lot of television movies and things like that. So, to come back to go and do My Three Sons, I said if everyone else is doing it, okay.
Okay.
I don't know why with the Partridge Family. It was some brain fart of Dick Clark's, and it was like,
It just seemed like such an interesting or I mean I could see My Three Sons and Family Affair because it
yeah,
seemed like
yeah.
the same producers,
Same
same network.
producers. No, it was Dick Clark, Dick Clark production, and well, somehow, some way, I don't know why he mashed up those two shows. They really were not, I think, in sync.
Not
But
at all.
Oh,
Yeah.
whatever. It was a weird day, weird week. It was we got yelled at by Dick in that one too because they told us as favored nations. Everybody gets the same billing and the same amount of money and blah blah blah. Except for David Cassidy. Okay, got it. Makes sense. Brad. Shirley Jones. Okay,
Right.
makes sense. All the other kids, Susan Day. She got and special guest Susan Day, and we were like, what? Why? Why not special guest Barry Livingston? I think I've done even more
Right.
than her post. Anyway, her husband, I think, was an agent at ICM. And in fairness, I think she was just about to do LA Law. But that wasn't the deal. It was like just the major, major, major stars were going to get their separate. So, yeah, we had a moment where, and Tim, who was not afraid to buck the system and authority, said, well, we're not coming down to shoot this thing on actually the day they wanted to tape. Until they address this because we brought it to their attention that that was the original deal. And of course, then we did the table read and we, saw they read out the credits and we're like, huh. And so we tried to get them to adjust and fix it, but they didn't. So
Wow.
come tape day, we
Well, considering,
holed
consider,
up in our dressing room for about 10 minutes till Dick Clark came and beat the door down and dragged us all out like the
Was he
little wimps we
screaming?
were. He was very upset. We were time is money. You boys are wasting my time. You're wasting my money. Get your asses down there.
Wow.
And I think he actually said, "We'll fix it." They never did.
well,
Yeah.
the
Wow.
thing is, it's called My Three Sons. You are part of the title. I would think
Right.
that, I don't know, compensate.
It just, it's so long ago. It's such
Oh,
a
I know.
Yeah.
meaningless little trivial piece of my little Hollywood history. So yeah, it was an interesting day, and again, we got a good tongue lashing by Dick Clark.
Fine.
Very,
I would
We
have loved
folded
one.
our tent, huh?
I would have loved one. I would just, just to say, hey, who yelled at me on set?
Oh God,
I
it was.
think that'd be fun.
Yeah, it was not fun at the moment, but in retrospect, we go. I guess I don't know. Did we deserve it? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but
Barry, I gotta ask you one that I read, and this was another one of those moments in your career. I was blown away. I'm reading, and or I might have seen you in an interview. I can't remember, but you literally told this story about Elvis. I was like, what? Elvis in a limousine? What is that story? Like, where was that?
it was at Paramount, and I was just prior to My Three Sons, I was doing a movie with Debbie Reynolds called My Six Loves,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was a big movie. Cliff Robertson was in it, and David Jansen,
Oh,
Eileen Heckard.
wow.
It was a Gower champion. I don't know if that
Oh,
naming
of
anything.
course.
Mhm.
He was a legendary Broadway director.
Legend.
His first film that he was going to be doing. I don't think he did anything after that. Anyway, I was riding my bike around the lot. Had free time, and Paramount's a big place, and a lot of movies, a lot of production things are going on there. And
Oh, yeah.
I came across this beautiful long white Cadillac limousine, and I went, "Well, look at that. That's pretty cool." And the door was open, and I kind of like stopped and peeked inside, and then I hear that famous voice, "Hey, son, you like what you see," that kind of a thing. And I was like, "Oh my God, it's Elvis!" And
You
anyway,
knew, like, even though you were younger, you were like, oh my God, that's Elvis Presley.
of course, I mean,
Wow.
I was probably 10 or 11, but be like, of course, everybody knew Elvis. And he was not only at this part of his stage veering out of what I thought was the cool Elvis, the early rock and roll jailhouse rock heartbreak hotel, into the Colonel's exploitative, Blue Hawaii and all
Right.
all the kind of junky films he did for $1 million each. I think he was the
Literally.
first guy that got $1 million for a picture. Anyway, he was going to take a little spin. Chuck Barris had customized it or done some work on it, and he just said, "I'm going to take a little tour around the lot. Hop in. You want to come with me?" I was like, "Yeah."
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was a 10-minute ride, nothing spectacular. He turned on the TV and we watched a cartoon, Popeye, and came back around, gave me a Coke. Not a whole lot was said. I don't know if he might have recognized me from as a somewhat working child actor. Because like I said, he probably did, because I had already done about 16 episodes of the Ozzie and Harriet show,
Yeah,
and
right.
Rick, I'm sure he knew Rick pretty well and probably
Good
watched them.
point.
He probably knew who I was, had seen me on something or other. So yeah, it was just a nice little, brief little moment with the King,
And Popeye.
and Popeye. He loved Popeye, and
You,
Who
what
knew?
blew me away is he actually knew when Popeye was coming on, because I said, "What was your favorite cartoon?" I said, "Popeye." Oh, well, clicked. I think it's on right now, and at 3:30, he sort of knew the schedule.
That's on Channel 5.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So he was a big
wow.
kid, just a big kid.
So when you were in the back of the car with him, was it just were you were you actually watching Popeye, or were you sitting there drinking your Coke thinking, I'm sitting
Oh,
next to Elvis Presley?
no, all of it, all of it. Sitting there and just going, "This is weird. This is kind of cool," and some no creepiness involved
Yeah,
whatsoever.
sure.
That sort of, in this day and age, everyone jumps to some kind of creepy
Oh, of
conclusion.
course.
No, it was just like,
Uh,
he's a sweet guy, and he
yeah.
probably knew who I was. I certainly knew who he was. He saw I was enamored with that, and very, very generously and graciously said, "Come on, I see you like my limo. I'll show you." All of that sounds creepy today. See you like my limo? Want to come around?
Right, right.
No, it had nothing like that
That's
going on.
so cool. That's so cool. So the other part that got me was Here's Lucy. I mean, and I remember that episode with you with that pompadour
Yeah,
hair on your
mohawk.
head, and I remember
Yeah.
that whole scene. Well, what was Lucy like? Because another thing I saw, she was going by, I want to say in her golf cart, and she actually yelled to you like, "Hey, Barry!"
Well, by
did you
then
have a
I
relationship?
yeah, again, I had done a few films and I'd done the Ozzie and Harriet show, and I was on the lot at that point as the kid next door and My Three Sons. So she knew who I was. I, had no idea she knew who I was, but I knew she was at that point. Desi Lou Studios was Lucille Ball's gig.
Right.
Desi had just, no longer part of that world. And yeah, she kind of was racing around the lot in her golf cart and practically, ran me over, and as in her dust, "Hey Barry, hey, hi," and smoking a cigarette, and just like,
Wow.
"Oh my God, she knew my name? That's pretty crazy." And then she requested that I do an episode, and I did a couple actually. Played actually Gail Gordon, who was Mr. Mooney,
Yes.
his son. But then, yeah, probably the more famous of those episodes, or more fun, was the one where she gave me a haircut and it turned out to be a mohawk, and but yeah, it was, we shot side by side
Mhm.
because we were in stage 11, she was in stage 12, where they shot the Lucy show.
Wow.
So it was literally just walking from one doorway into the other to go do her show, and I was still, under contract to do. Oh, I don't know. They were probably doing about 30 episodes of Sons. I probably did 15, 17, something like that in that first year. So, there was room for me to go off and do a couple other things.
Do you remember when you were doing that scene with the pompadour? Was it like, just like, hey, it's just a job, or was it like, wow,
No,
I'm with Lucy?
that was more than just a job. That was,
Yeah.
again, it was like working with Jackie Gleason or Jerry Lewis. It was
Mhm.
so iconic to be in Lucy's orbit. But again, she was tough. She not with me, not mean, but she a taskmaster and clearly steering the ship, and
Wow.
knew it. And and she, if something wasn't funny, she thought, she was very vocal about about it with her opinions,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was very cool.
Well, I'll tell you. Before we go, I do this on every episode of the podcast. I like to give you a chance to kind of tell the fans, like, either something that you're involved with currently in your career. I know that, and I'd like you to also talk a little bit about Notorious Nick, which I
Hmm.
know you just put out, and obviously your book that you came out with it as well. Which, I'll be quite honest, I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list. I got to check it out. So yeah, please.
Yeah, well, the book, The Importance of Being Ernie, it's been out for a few years, and recounts some of the stories that we talked about here and more. It was interesting. I just finished actually The Social Network, the film, David Fincher film. So
Great movie.
yeah, it was, why write it? I don't know. I kind of got to the point where I went, there was a nice hill that I went up to do Sons, and after that, a lot of work in LA and Hollywood, television movies, and then went to New York, did Broadway, and then I kind of came back, and I was in my 30s, and things kind of dipped, slowed a little. Things started to rebound probably in the 90s, and there was a recurring role on Doogie Howser, and then I suddenly was doing some films at Zodiac with David, and then I
Mhm.
did asked me to do Social Network. So I thought, oh, well, there's kind of bookends here. Maybe I can write about that and everything in between.
Yeah.
So that's the book. You can find it on Amazon. And Notorious Nick is, I think, a really cool little movie. I did just came out last year. You can find it on Amazon Prime
Mhm.
or Voodoo. No, I guess any you got to Google it, but I think Amazon Prime is showing Notorious Nick. And it was a major role. It was something very different for me. I usually play doctors or lawyers or accountants or scientists.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
this was a wrestling coach, and to a guy. It's a true story about a guy who only had one arm. One was defective. He had a congenital defect, but a guy named Nick Newell true story. He went on to become champion of the world in his weight class in mixed martial arts.
Really?
Um,
With
and
one arm?
with one arm. Yeah, it's an
Wow.
amazing story. And
That is
you
a
can
cool
imagine
story.
the struggles that he encountered trying to be taken seriously, that he could actually hold his own
Yeah.
in fighting ring. Mixed martial arts is such a brutal sport, but I played his wrestling coach in high school, and he excelled, and then of course he, you know, encountered all the difficulties getting out of school. And what do you do with your life? And only one working arm, but then he crazily decided he wanted to try mixed martial arts, and so he comes back to me, his high school wrestling coach, who he had a good relationship with, said, "Can you help me do this?" And I go, "I don't, I don't, I don't know anything about that." And so together they took a plunge, and and eventually he did get a shot at the title and
That's
won.
cool.
It's a
That's
great
seriously
story.
cool.
Very cool.
Wow.
And
Wow.
yeah, it's Notorious Nick. I think it's a cool little movie. And good Kevin Pollak is in it. Elizabeth Rome is in it. Cody Christian, who's kind of real, hottie from Teen Wolf, and I guess All American, plays Nick Newell. It's good cast. Really, really works.
Very
And then
cool.
I have a recurring role on in the Bosch world. The Bosch
Yes, you do.
Great
uh,
series.
came out now. The Bosch Legacy just dropped a couple months ago, and on Amazon Freebie, which is like we're saying it's just like TV. It's like okay, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just programs with commercials.
Right,
Where have I
exactly.
heard that concept before?
Right. Right.
Uh, so you get it through Amazon Prime, but you can scroll down, you'll find Amazon Freebie, and it's a lot of new content, and because the original Bosch series started and still is on Amazon Prime, but but Bosch Legacy is the next stage of Harry Bosch, the private. He's a private detective now instead of a LAPD homicide
Wow.
detective. So yeah, I'm really kind of proud and happy to be still part of that franchise.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, listen, just thanks a ton
All
for
right.
being on the program. Love talking to you. I thought it was amazing, and it's so cool to see somebody that started out as a child actor not completely derail themselves and have this
Completely insane.
successful career. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you, there's no small accomplishment there. I think that's just terrific what you've done.
I'm sitting here in polka dot underwear. You just don't see how crazy
We
it is.
don't judge. We don't judge.
My,
But
my,
people watching this, go to Barry's IMDb. Buddy, you are one of the most busy
you
character actors
wear your finger out, right? Scrolling. Wait a minute.
Oh,
Oh my, I'm so tired scrolling through these
out.
credits. Oh
Down to
Lord,
the
does it
bottom,
ever end?
you go to the bottom, towards the bottom, you can see, watch Popeye with Elvis Presley.
Right.
Probably one of the better credits.
that is great.
I think it is. There's a lot of junk in there too, but I think that's a highlight for sure.
Hey, junk that pays scale plus 10 and can pay the bills. Who cares? That's called being an actor.
Junk has paid off my mortgage, and
Yeah.
junk continues to 39 cents continues to arrive in the mail from things I did 100 years ago. So I'll take it.
But you've continued on. I mean, it's just incredible. I got to tell you a quick side note. I actually was in a Honda commercial with you
Oh,
many
with
years
Jason
ago.
Alexander was in that too.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and he hadn't done Seinfeld yet.
oh, that's so funny that you
But
remember that. Yeah,
I no, I
yeah,
only it was a bunch of guys packing up a
yeah,
car to
yes,
go fishing or something, and
yeah.
I talked to Jason a little bit, and I was shocked because they're going, well, they flew him out from New York to do this. I go, really? Oh, wow. Well, who are you now? And it was prior to him doing Seinfeld,
Yes,
but I think he was on Broadway doing
Mhm.
something. He was a Broadway star.
right. Oh, yeah. He's a big Broadway guy. Yeah.
But I said, "Oh, really? You do a lot any commercials?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah. How many? I got 10 or 12 national spots running right now." Really? I'm doing this one stinking regional little
Right,
Honda
exactly.
commercial. And I'm going, thank you,
Yeah,
Jesus,
right.
for my little
Right.
regional thing."
I
And
was
he's
I
like,
was sitting right next to you, going, "Thank you, Jesus."
yeah. I go, wow, this guy, who
Wow.
is this guy anyway? And yeah, that was funny.
So what a small world. Well, that's cool. That's so cool you remember that. But
Yeah, dude.
anyway, listen, thanks a bunch. I wish you tons of success continuing on with
Continue.
your career. Yeah.
So
So
I do get
anyway,
that.
Barry, have a wonderful day, and thanks so
Okay.
much.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Eric.
All
See
right.
you later.
Take care,
Take
Barry.
care, buddy.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Hey, if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button in the corner of the video so that you don't miss any of our future YouTube podcasts. Also, follow us on iTunes and Spotify and leave us a review.